Hello. It's the fifth day of January. The year is still young, so it's in order for me to wish you a happy new year. Maybe this is your first time that you're watching us. This is Now Tell Us, an episode or a podcast where we welcome people to share with us their thoughts, their ideas. They educate us, they inspire us, and always we have a great time with our guests. And I'm the host of this new Now Tell Us. And my name is Anthony Morore. I'm a speaker and also an author. I've written a book known as Be Good for Good and also the Achieve Your Dream Workbook. And some great reports from the readers have been coming in. I remind you, please go check them out. But now we come here to listen to our guests. And talking of books, our guest today is an author, and she focuses on what she's going to tell us, because this is Now Tell Us, that is important to our mental health. America in Therapy is a new book that is coming out, but let me not preempt everything because I love the guests telling us all that they have to, because this is their time. Now, our guest name is Phyllis Leavitt, and I would ask you to help me to welcome her. But before we do that, please remember to share this episode with all your friends. If you have a question along the way, ask. If you have anything to say about the podcast or the episode, we love feedback. So thank you in advance. Subscribe to our channels, and yeah, that's about it. Let's go and meet Phyllis because I'm eager to hear what she has to tell us. So here we go. Hi, Phyllis.
Hi, Anthony. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Yes, we are honored to have you here. And thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah. From which part of the world are you?
I am in Taos, New Mexico.
Oh, okay. And is that where you were born?
No, I was born in New Jersey, but I moved to the Southwest in 1984, 85. So I've been out in the Southwest for quite a long time.
The reason of moving, if I may ask?
Oh, gosh, it's a long story, but I'll make it really short. Yeah, well, I had visited the Southwest when I was in my early 20s, and I always wanted to come back. And so at kind of a turning point in my first marriage, we just moved out here and started out in Santa Fe, and then I moved to Taos.
Okay, that's good enough. So, in today's episode, we are talking about America in Therapy. And it's actually coming from a book that I saw somewhere. Uh, a picture of it is there, America in Therapy. That's a new approach to hope and healing for a nation in crisis. That's a beautiful cover.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So you're an author.
Yes.
Where did it all begin?
Well, good question. I'll try to make that brief too. I always wanted to be a writer, even when I was like a little girl. Writing was my thing. And I started out, writing poetry when I was a teenager. I really didn't know what I wanted to write about, but writing was a way that I connected to myself and, sort of explored my inner world in a way that just thinking didn't do. So I was always drawn to writing. And then I kind of went on my own very deep healing journey from abuse in my childhood. And writing was kind of my lifeline. I kept a journal and I, sort of explored my thoughts and feelings and really tried to connect to my inner self. And then eventually did a lot of therapy myself and decided to become a psychotherapist. And so my whole career has been as a psychotherapist in private practice, working with families and children and adults and couples, and really discovering that abuse and neglect on many, many levels, emotional, physical, sexual, um, in our families in America is quite rampant. And of course, one of the things I want to say is that I wrote this book called America in Therapy because I live in America and I'm familiar with the dynamics of this country, but the principles that I talk about healing really apply worldwide, because we're, I think, in a lot of difficulty in our human relations all over the world. And that's really what psychotherapy and the best family therapy addresses, is dysfunctional family dynamics that produce dysfunctional behaviors in human beings. And what happens if we don't interrupt that cycle and restore ourselves to mental health and well-being? So, out of my own personal experience and years of being a psychotherapist, I realized that the dynamics of an unhealthy family actually play out in businesses, they play out in places of worship, they play out in communities, and they play out in government.
Mm-hmm.
And to the extent that we don't have healthy family dynamics in our largest institutions, then we're all affected by those unhealthy family dynamics. And we're seeing that in America, and we're certainly seeing that all over the world, with war and genocide and racial divide and racial hatred, and often prejudice against women and people of minority associations of any kind. And these are all dysfunctional family dynamics. In one family, if you had parents that fed one child and didn't feed the other, we'd say there was something wrong with them.
Yeah.
And that's the lens that I want to look through at our country and really at our world, not from the point of view of blame, but from the point of view of what's needed for healing. And I believe the lens of looking through ourselves as a family, as an American family, as a human family, is the missing piece in what's going on in the world today, because we actually do know how to heal trauma. We know how, at least we know a lot about how to heal trauma, and we know a lot about how to prevent it that we're not using in our national policy or conversation.
Mm.
So that's it in a nutshell.
That's wonderful. So, yeah, American therapy, and I believe, as you say, that all over the world, people are experiencing some of and most of, or maybe all of the challenges that you mentioned that are happening in America. So it's timely that you bring out this book, and I believe that it's going to be helpful to people who are healing from that state. Now, we'll go deeper into that in a while, but before we go deeper into that, your first book, which was it? Before we
My first two books were about my own healing journey,
Okay.
because I found myself in a very lost place when I was in my mid 30s, and I was a mother of three children and in a fairly non-functional marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of reached that bottom out place um, where I just knew that I needed help. And before that, I, was sort of white knuckling my way through life. And because I've always been kind of a highly functioning person on the outside, but on the inside, I did not feel that way. I had a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression. And I finally went to therapy myself. And that was in the mid 80s, when, that was kind of like, therapy was kind of becoming more acceptable, at least among the people that I knew. Because
Okay.
before that, I felt like going to therapy was a sign of failure and weakness. And I felt like I should be able to manage my life on my own. When actually what I've discovered, both as a client and as a therapist, is it takes great strength to go to therapy and really like delve into what we have survived that has injured us, and really try to develop new coping mechanisms and heal some of the negative beliefs we have about ourselves that drive those coping mechanisms so that we can be more loving to ourselves and more functional and relational with the people around us.
Hmm. When
So,
was when was the first when did you first become a published author? Because we are talking, I
yeah,
love it when we have authors on our episode because they share their of how they became published
right.
authors, and maybe you can inspire someone out there.
Yeah, so I think it was 2013 when I published the first book. I wrote two books about my own journey. One is called A Light in the Darkness, and the second one, which is sort of a sequel to that, is called Into the Fire. And I really chronicled what I was trying to heal from and how I made a very deep connection to myself, to my inner self, through journaling and writing and kind of prayer, asking for guidance and asking for help. And I did have enormous help from along the way in my journey from within. And there was a piece that I really needed to work on with other people, with help from others.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but
Okay, that's good. And now we come back to America in Therapy. This is a book that is being released this year. Uh, Although
right,
I discover it's available somewhere, but then it's going to be officially available later in the year, if I saw that right.
that's right.
Yeah. Did you self-publish it, or do you have a publisher?
I have a publisher. I'm being published by Morgan James Publishers. And yeah, the first two books I self published, but this time I really wanted the support of a publisher.
Okay, then it's good. So I'm gonna look briefly at some of the chapters, and maybe
Mm,
we can
okay,
the chapter titles. Maybe we can have a clue of what is covered there, and maybe it's something that you already touched, but you can dive deeper into what
sure.
you talk about there. Not all chapters, but let's start at chapter one and say a word on the brink.
Hmm. Yeah, really, part of the motivation for writing this book is that I feel great concern for the human race.
Mm-hmm.
I feel great concern for our viability as a species because the way that we're going, seems to be, and I'll call it kind of old paradigm, which I think is dying hard in America and around the world, is we're still in a win lose paradigm. Somebody has to beat somebody else out. Somebody has to dominate another population or another person or another economic group or another race or another gender. And the way that, and I know that that's part of our nature as animals. We have both competed, but we have also cooperated to survive. And the ways that we're competing right now, I think in some ways very unthought out on a mass level, are with weapons of mass destruction and polluting the earth for immediate gain. And I think we're really literally in danger of going extinct, either from a war that we cannot recover from because we've used weapons that we cannot survive, or we've destroyed the planet's ability to feed us and house us because we're tampering too much with the environment with chemicals and pollutants and not sort of cleaning up after ourselves, or using some of the most sustainable methods worldwide and in America that we know, preserve the environment. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, there are many people advocating for this. So I'm not pretending that there aren't. There are many people advocating for peaceful human relations, for resolving conflict without war, for loving one another and caring for one another.
Mm-hmm.
And not all of those people are in positions of power today. And that, I think, is some of the danger that we face, that many of the institutions we have and leaders, people in positions of leadership, are working off of that paradigm of domination and submission, which I believe is seriously a threat to our existence.
Mm-hmm. In chapter 5, you talk about victims, survivors, and
Hmm.
victimizers. unpacking the roles of abuse
Yeah,
for us.
I'm so glad you mentioned that chapter, because there's so many things I talk about in my book that we won't be able to, touch on just because we don't have that much time.
Yeah.
But one of the things, I worked in a sexual abuse treatment program for a couple of years before I went into private practice, and I'm very, very familiar with the dynamics of abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of what I write about, because I think a lot of people don't understand that inside the perpetrator is also a victim. People don't become perpetrators unless they've been hurt or
Mm-hmm.
they've had terrible role models of how to deal with other human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think what we need as a new paradigm is to understand there's a couple of things, and I'll retrace my steps here for a minute. So the word victim, I remember in the 80s, people started talking about what happened to them. They were molested by their stepfather or an uncle or a stranger or even a woman. And people started bringing this out into the open. It was no longer taboo.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and they really started talking about their victimization and naming perpetrators. And that was a really good thing. I mean, it brought something out of hiding that needed to be out of hiding. But just as quickly, victim became sort of a taboo word.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're supposed to be survivors. You can't talk about being a victim because you have to have gotten through it, and now you're a survivor and a thriver.
Mm-hmm.
And while, of course, that's the goal. We know, none of us want to stay in the position of feeling victimized for the rest of our lives. We want to recover. We want to feel like survivors, and we want to thrive in the lives that we have.
Yeah.
But my position is that we have to really deeply acknowledge victimization for that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's sort of a bypassy kind of language to pass over the word victim and only talk about surviving, because it's an injustice to the pain that so many people have felt from being violated by other human beings. So that's just a really important thing for me that I felt like I really wanted to highlight, that it's okay to talk about victimization. It's important to talk about it because it's part of the healing process. And we have to give that to one another. Because sometimes the process of healing takes a long time, and we can stay. And I know that from my own healing journey, that there were many, many painful years. And I remember saying to my therapist, my first therapist, I remember saying, please don't judge how long this takes me,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know how long it's going to take me.
Yeah.
And I needed that. I needed that to move into a place of being a survivor, which I really feel like I have. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that has enabled me to hold that light for other people, because I know it's possible, but only with great compassion and great acceptance. And
Mm-hmm.
we have people all over the world today who have survived, who have been victimized and survived things that I can't even imagine. You
Mm-hmm.
know, their whole families being bombed in front of their eyes, or, their villages destroyed, their lives destroyed, their children killed in front of them. I don't even know how to go there, but I know that pain isn't something that people get over really quickly, or as if at all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the other piece of what I wanted to share, which I said in the beginning, is that we have to know, and I think we really don't know this as a society. Many of us know this, but I don't think it's common knowledge that inside the worst victimizers, those who create and perpetrate atrocities,
Yeah.
these are very, very hurting, very damaged individuals. And
Mm.
unless we commit to rehabilitation for everyone, to healing for everyone, we can't break the cycle.
And I agree
We
with
have
you. He's someone who said that hurting people hurt people.
100%, a
Yeah.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
And that really speaks to, and I've brought this up many times, it really speaks to our criminal justice system, which
Mm-hmm.
is so lacking in humanity, so lacking in understanding that so many of the people who are incarcerated today have had horrible upbringing and lives of deprivation and abuse and neglect, that they have not survived well,
Mm,
and they have acted out their victimization because that's all they had left as coping mechanisms. And we have to care. We have to really bring a spirit of rehabilitation to everyone. I
mm.
really believe that.
Yeah, sure, sure. And you saying that we have to care. And chapter number 7 talks about facing pain to heal.
Yes. Such a you're so good at picking out things that I love to talk about, of course, because I wrote the book.
Of
But
course, every part of the book I do.
right? But yeah, because I feel like we also live in a society, and this is part of the victim thing too, but we live in a society where we sort of have an expectation that we're going to get over pain really quickly. We can take a pill, we can watch a movie,
Yeah.
we can exercise ourselves to death, or we can starve ourselves to death, or we can do whatever not to feel the pain that we're carrying,
Mm-hmm.
because we still believe, I think, that it's a sign of weakness, or it's a sign of, why didn't you pull yourself up by your bootstraps or move on with life? That happened in the past, move on. When in fact, and this is all of my own personal experience and my experience as a psychotherapist of so many years, that it's actually facing pain that takes courage and strength. We don't do it alone, most of us. I mean, we can do some of it alone, but it's even more healing if we can do it in the safety and the acceptance of another human being. Because I really believe this statement, you said hurting people hurt people.
Yeah.
And there's another statement, which is there's really no way around but through. And I believe that.
Mm,
It's really going into the pain
yeah.
that is the doorway out of pain. And resisting going into the pain perpetuates some of our most dysfunctional adaptations.
Mm, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I will love that. Thank you for sharing that. And the last part I'm going to point out so that you can draw something out from there. Uh, in chapter number 9, you talk about repair being the hope of our country. Now,
Yes.
tell us, how do we repair? What do you suggest? What are
Yeah.
the ways, ideas, and strategies that
hmm
we may be having there?
Let me preface that really quickly by saying that part of what we see as role models in our country today, the infighting, the name calling, the character bashing that's going on in many of the people in positions of leadership in America today, and probably all over the world, these are signs of terrible dysfunction. If
Mm,
we saw them happening in a family, we would say, get some help. Don't treat each other that way, right?
mhm,
Um, and because we're really still very much dominated by this partisan mentality, one side has to win, and therefore the other side has to lose. And we're going to great lengths to try to beat our opponents. And in the best psychology, the agenda is not partisan. If a
mm,
couple comes to therapy, we don't try to have one partner better the other, or beat them into submission, or shame them into, some kind of, self-blame.
mm,
We try to heal a relationship. We try to help people hear each other and respect each other and validate each other. Certainly, yes, if one person is behaving in a way that's threatening or destructive,
mhm,
we have to call that out. But not like you're a bad person, but like, where did that come from in you? What's the pain causing, the way you scream at your partner or hit your children? What's the pain in you that is unhealed?
mm,
So, so we really try to restore people to their best self, to their most essential self. And that healing takes place partly by healing the family dynamic, not by having somebody win over another and having somebody else lose. And
mm,
so in that chapter where I talk about repair, and I talk about repair on other levels in the book too, but in that particular chapter, I talk about 6 elements that are really critical to repairing our human relations that I would love to see incorporated into national conversation, into politics, into the way we conduct our country, into the role models that our leaders demonstrate for our young people and for all of us,
Mm,
that we actually incorporate healthy human relating into our national conversation, because it would actually change the way we do things dramatically. So
mm,
some of those things are, and I'll just say what the basic element is, and then I'll kind of list them for you. Um, and I don't know how much time we have to go into them, but I think it'll be clear from what I say what they are,
mhm,
that the bottom line of the best healing is the more we can take responsibility for ourselves and stop
mhm,
blaming other people.
mhm,
And so all of the principles of repair that I mentioned in that chapter are based in that. So the first one is restraint. I learn to tolerate my own distress. If you say something that makes me mad or hurts my feelings or upsets me in some way, I learn to restrain myself from storming out, slamming doors, calling you names, hurling back accusations, whatever is not constructive for us to come back together and reconnect and repair our relationship. And that's the whole point, is
mm,
that what we need in this world is repair of our relationships, not somebody winning a war.
mm,
Um, so restraint is enormous. I have to tolerate my distress if I don't like what you're saying.
mhm.
That's not the only thing, but that's the first thing,
Okay.
because because if we're going to repair a relationship, we have to feel safe.
Mm,
And if you're going to act out on me or I'm going to act out on you, neither one of us is going to feel safe and nothing is going to get repaired.
yeah.
Because when we don't feel safe, what happens? We just mobilize all our defenses.
Mhm,
And defenses is what we're trying to take down in the best therapy so that
mm,
we can actually hear each other. So
mhm,
the second element is I learn how to reflect on myself. Where am I coming from? What am I trying to accomplish here? Am I doing that in a way that is actually constructive for our relationship? Am I doing that in a way that opens me to the possibility of hearing your point of view? These things are very hard for human beings. We all feel like we're right and the other person is wrong. I
mm,
don't know anybody who doesn't feel that. But if you have two people come together or two countries come together and one is invested in their right and the other is wrong, where are we getting? Because we're just going to have, I'm right, you're wrong, and we're just going to fight it out often to the death.
mhm.
And unfortunately, to the death of so many innocent people, which is what we're seeing today,
Yeah.
which is just heartbreaking.
Mhm,
So I have to reflect on where I'm coming from. And am I coming from, an old wound? Maybe I was never heard, so I want to shout you down.
mm,
Maybe I felt abandoned, so I'm going to make sure that you see me and hear me so that I'm part of this picture.
mhm,
But so these things require inner work, but they're principles. Instead of blaming you, I reflect on myself
mm,
and I take the next one is responsibility. And then I take responsibility for my behavior.
mhm.
Most often in any given argument or conflict between two people, we both have a part.
Yeah.
Maybe I, make faces at you like
Mhm,
when you're talking, or I just turn away and, wall off, or I say something that I know is going to hurt you,
mhm,
or I just, refuse to let you in. It can
mm,
be anything, but I take responsibility for my part in what's going on because invariably there's something I could do better. There's
mhm,
something I could do more that would foster relationship. Maybe it's just talking in a softer tone of voice. Maybe it's making more compassionate eye contact with you when you're talking. It
mhm.
could be anything. And it might be, and this is the next one where I call it rehabilitation, but it's really rehabilitation of ourselves.
Okay.
You know, it's like, how could I make amends? What do I need to make amends for?
Mhm,
Maybe I still disagree with you and I don't like the way you behaved or what you said or what you did, but maybe I can say, I'm sorry I shouted when I was upset, or
mhm.
I'm sorry I walked out and I didn't hear all of what you had to say.
Yeah.
So there's something that I can do
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's big. Sometimes what you're asking of me is, I really want you to go to therapy and work on your anger issues. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's what I need to do
Mm-hmm.
to come back in a safe way to you. So it
Mm-hmm.
can be something little and it can be something enormous. Um, the issue of reparations has come up many times in America about reparations for Black people and reparations for Native American people,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a sense in part of our population that terrible wrongs were done and we need to do something now. And what I say is the best amends anyone can make to another human being is to behave differently now,
Mm.
is to not do the thing that hurt them in the first place.
Yeah.
And obviously, if there's a sincere, heartfelt apology that goes along with that, it's really healing. And if you've ever had that experience, either you have given a heartfelt apology to someone and really wanted to make amends, or they have done that for you. There's nothing like it. It feels so loving. It feels so connective. It feels so healing. Um, and so I can't stress that one enough.
Mm.
And then, obviously offering rehabilitation to people who need it the most. And then the fifth one is what I call resolution. Maybe there's an agreement we need to make.
Mm.
Maybe I need to agree that I will always call you if I'm going to be late because I know you worry. Or
Mm.
maybe I agree to go to therapy because I have anger issues. Or maybe I agree to parent our children differently because you're upset with the way that I do it and you don't think it's good. Whatever that is. But I do want to say that sometimes when the first four steps are taken, restraint, reflection, responsibility, and reparation and amends, that sometimes the disagreement just dissolves and we don't even need to make an agreement because we're like we've reconnected and we're in harmony and
Mm.
I see your point of view and you see mine and we both feel heard and it's over. But
Mm.
sometimes we really need to have agreements that we commit to keep because the issues are big and change takes time. um, and especially if you think about two countries,
Mm.
probably making resolutions and coming to agreements about peacekeeping or conflict resolution or aid or whatever it is we're talking about. These are probably really important resolutions and agreements that need to be made and kept. And the
Mm.
whole purpose of all of this is that we reconnect. And I think you can see that a lot of what's going on in politics in our country today, politics and policy and rhetoric, is not about reconnecting with one another. It's about further divisiveness that incites violence. And for me, that's very, very frightening because we've had a civil war. We have people talking about civil war in the United States.
Mm.
This is not something to laugh off. This
Yeah.
is really serious.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we had our capital being attacked and invaded. That's never happened before, you
Mm.
know. Um, so the threat is high if we don't reorient ourselves to how do we reconnect? How do we hear each other deeply? How do we develop empathy for each other's pain? I love to tell this story if I have time. Can I tell a quick story?
Yeah,
Um,
please do. We love
yeah.
stories. Now tell us.
Okay. So there was a mediator that I had met in Santa Fe many years ago named Craig Barnes. He was an international mediator. He has since passed away, unfortunately. But I
Mm.
went to a talk that he gave, and he talked about when he would sit down with, let's just say, warring communities or races or whoever he was mediating some kind of truce with, he would always start with asking them to share with each other their deepest pain,
Mm.
the people that they had lost, the murders they had witnessed, those who had been raped or whose homes had been destroyed or places of worship had been bombed, whole towns lost. He had them share their pain. And once they did that, they could begin to build empathy because their pain was all the same.
Mm.
Their pain was from loss. Their pain was from violation. Their pain was from violence. Their pain was from hatred. Their pain was from discrimination or starvation or whatever it was. And so people could start out on the same page. And that is such an important part of the deep listening that those six elements of repair make possible.
Hmm.
They make possible this deep empathic listening where we can connect to our brotherhood. We're
Hmm.
all human. Every single one of us suffers if our child is killed.
Hmm.
No differently, no matter who we are.
Yeah, sure. Sure. Exactly. I agree with you. Wow, Phyllis, thank you very much for sharing all that you have shared with us today. I really appreciate. So, for anybody who may have joined us along as we were going on and you don't know what we are talking about America in Therapy that is coming from a book that Phyllis is releasing in 2024. And again, we repeat that America's problems are not unique. This is why we recommend the
Right.
book globally. Uh,
Yes.
if we are going to look deep into the book and restrain, reflect, take responsibility, rehabilitate, go for resolution, then reconnect, then we are going to have some healing and hope for the future.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Phyllis. We really appreciate you for.
Thank you. And if I can just say really quickly, please connect with me on my website. It's just my name, phyllisleavitt.com, because I'd love to hear from any of your listeners and certainly promote you and your wonderful show. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Phyllis. So once again, go to www.phyllisleavitt.com. It's there, and connect with Phyllis. I know she's got much to share on this topic. And by the way, we only touch this much of
I
the.
know. Exactly.
So
Exactly.
that's why we recommend each and every one of you to go and get the book and read it and apply it in any area of your life that is going to be helpful. Well, once again, we really thank you, Phyllis.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So let me get personal before we go. How old are you?
76.
What's the secret?
Of what? Of being 76?
No, you don't look 76. You
Oh, thank
again,
you so much.
with the way that you present yourself, with everything, and with this all this knowledge. Of course, it's a knowledge that you've gathered over the years, and that's why we are drawing some wisdom from you. And how do you maintain that? uh,
I guess I would say a lot of things. I have a very strong spiritual life,
okay.
and I feel very blessed. I feel that I have had the opportunity from, gathering wisdom from other people to understand some of the things in my own life that you and I talked about, particularly the one about facing your pain to heal.
Hmm.
I think we just really want to run away from it as much as we can, which is understandable. Who wants to feel pain? But I
Mm.
had a friend when I was, oh gosh, I was really young, early 20s, who went to India to find a guru. And he had glass contact lenses at that time. And he was on a really dusty train. And by the time he got to this guru that he had gone there to meet, his eyes were so inflamed that he was in excruciating pain. And he told me this story when he got back. And so he told this man, like I can't even open my eyes. They hurt so much. Um, and the guru told him, don't fight it because fighting it makes it worse. And I never forgot that story. It became like this guiding light in my life of really surrendering to whatever was most difficult in my life, not as resignation, but as the access to transforming it. And I think that's the principle of the best spirituality. And I think it's the principle of the best psychotherapy. And so when I talk about psychotherapy, I'm really talking about everything that I've learned along the way. And I feel, I left a very troubled marriage a long time ago. And I did years of really deep work on myself, and it was not easy. It was not that much fun being a single mother and doing that. And it enabled me to meet a wonderful partner now. I have a wonderful husband now. I have a beautiful life in a beautiful place. And like so many of us, and I don't know your story and I'd love to hear it, you want to give back what you got,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So that's it. And that keeps me alive and that keeps me vibrant. And, I'm excited to share what I've been given with other people because I feel like you, I'm sure, I love human beings and I love this earth and I want us to survive and thrive here.
Sure. Let's survive and thrive. And let's live in peace. Let's be there for one another.
Yeah.
Yeah, our time is up. It's actually extended, but it was not extending the time for you because you really
Yeah.
did some important things.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to getting the link to your show and sharing it. And I just wish you the best because I think you're wonderful.
Likewise, here, I appreciate you, and we all appreciate you. We had viewers. We want to thank all our viewers. Uh, uh, we are extending, but then let's answer this question and then sign off. Brian is asking, and it's something that is in connection to maybe what I summed up with. How
Right.
does it feel to be so physically and mentally?
You know, I feel very grateful because I'm in really good health. So if I sometimes I can't relate to my age, and I look in the mirror and I feel the wrinkles on my face, and I feel like I don't feel 76. But it's daunting, and it's also sobering. Part of it is gratitude. I'm a healthy 76-year-old person, and a lot of people that I know aren't. Um, but the other thing is that first of all, I expect to live a long life because I have more books that I really want to write and more that I want to share.
Oh, yeah, I was
Um,
about to ask you, what are your dreams?
Absolutely. I mean, I have like three or four more books in my head already that I want to write. I'd actually like to write a sequel to American Therapy because
Okay.
I think there's some deeper cuts and understandings that I also really want to share. Some of them are in the book now, but there's more that I really want to go into.
Mm,
But part of it is that, like knowing that my time is limited in a way makes life more precious. It makes every moment more precious. It makes my love for my husband and my children and my grandchildren more precious and my friends, more valuable, my love of the earth. Um, so there's sort of there's a daunting side to it because we all know it ends somewhere. I'm hoping to live to 100, but but it really does make life very, very, very precious. And yeah, I think that's what I would say. Thank you for asking.
yeah, thank you, Brian. And thank you, every other person who's there. And thank you once again very much, Phyllis, for coming and everything that you've told us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so this has been Now Tell Us, and I have been your host, Anthony Moirore, and together with our guest today, Phyllis Leavitt, we want to thank each and every one of you, and bye for now. Until next time.
Bye.
It's bye.
Bye. Thank you.